what we do, but we work with area landowners like yourselves to protect land forever, protecting places like forests, farms, and the land around rivers and streams. And by protecting these places, we're protecting habitat for the plants and animals that are important to the natural heritage of Western North Carolina, and also helping to keep our waters clean. Our conserved lands also store tons of carbon dioxide, which helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and lessen climate change. Additionally, many of the properties that we help to protect are open to the public for recreation, like hiking and mountain biking, and ice climbing when we have favorable weather, just a little bit down the hill here. So on behalf of Conserving Carolina and the owner of Laughing Waters Retreat, Jane Lawson, seated to my right, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us this morning. And before introducing today's presentation, I'd like to let you know that our next program here at Laughing Waters will be on June 10th, and it will be outdoors, just down the hill at the pavilion, which is in the orchard. And the parking's a little different for that, so if you do decide to join us, just please make sure to look at the details on the website. We're going to have naturalist and educator Carlton Burke, who's with Carolina Mountain Naturalists, come and present his wild encounters. He'll be bringing some of his animal ambassadors that are native to the area and talking about wildlife with these animal ambassadors as educational tools. So you'll get an up-close and personal experience with that. So if you do have kids in your life, this would be a good one to bring to as well. But today we have what is sure to be a wonderful program about sustainable living in Hickory Nut Forest, presented by 3 members of Hickory Nut Forest, co-founder Jane Lawson, and homeowners in Hickory Nut Forest, Tia Wackerhagen and Elise Campaign, in that order. And I've just got a little bit of overview for each of these speakers, which I think you'll be interested in. Jane fell in love with these mountains in her childhood on a car trip in the 1950s, before the interstate highways had been built. Her family traveled from their home in industrial Ohio and then wound through long stretches of steep roads. She had told her parents that they were driving through soft pillows, and she imagined fairy tales unfolding in the forests and caves that they drove by. And she never forgot this. And when she graduated from college in the early 1970s, she joined the Back to the Land movement and ended up living at Long Branch Environmental Center in Buncombe County. The magic she had felt as a girl when riding through these mountains proved to be real, and she has lived in this part of the world pretty much ever since. And during this presentation, she'll tell you about how she and her late husband, John Myers, came to own 240 acres in Hickory Nut Gorge, and how they created Hickory Nut Forest Eco Community and Laughing Waters Retreat Center. Professionally, Jane was a middle school and high school teacher for 5 years before attending graduate school and becoming a dance therapist and mental health counselor. She worked in several hospitals in Western North Carolina in many different roles, eventually going back to graduate school in business, where she received her MBA and specialized in marketing hospitals and psychiatric treatment programs. Ultimately, she returned to clinical work and had a private psychotherapy practice, working primarily with women for the last 15 years of her career. And currently, she and the amazing team at Laughing Waters attempt to keep all the plates spinning in the ongoing evolution happening right here. And Tia and her family are relatively new members of Hickory Nut Forest. Tia is a registered nurse for Roof Above in Charlotte, serving individuals who have recently come out of chronic homelessness, not chiropractic homelessness, chronic homelessness. Yeah, sorry about that. She recently assisted with the 27th United Nations Environmental Conference in Egypt, helping to coordinate the first food pavilion, showing how agrisystems are part of the solutions to the climate crisis. And to further strengthen her passion, Tia is pursuing her doctorate in nursing practice in family nurse practitioner specialty at East Carolina University. She serves as co-chair for the Alliance for Healthy Nurses Food and Agricultural Committee, and Tia and her family were immediately attracted to Hickory Nut Forest for its focus on conservation, sustainability, and home building, and its community garden. And finally, we have Elise, who grew up on a farm in Maryland, where early on she became aware of the importance of protecting clean water when a local landfill polluted nearby wells. She was inspired to seek a career in environmental policy and spent a decade in Washington, D.C. as a legislative director of the National Resources Defense Council. She also served as a legislative aide in the U.S. House and Senate, handling climate change and other issues before the Environment and Public Works Committee. Recently, she accepted a position as climate initiative leader for the Southern Environmental Law Center, and Elise is the current president of Hickory Nut Forest Association and also serves on the Design Review Committee, which helps lot owners plan for energy-efficient green home construction. So if you would, please give a warm welcome to these wonderful women.
So, welcome everybody. So good to see so many people here, and to celebrate this endeavor of the speaking series with Conserving Carolina. Thank you, Pam Torlina. Most of all, she has made this so easy to set up because of all of her experience and expertise in the area. So many thanks to Pam. And thanks to all the Hickory Nut Forest people who are here and the greater Girton community as well for coming to support this endeavor. I couldn't do this without all of you, so thank you. So, not only today will we be sharing the history of this place, but also how we are putting into practice our goals of living sustainably. We're here to really show how it is possible to do this. You don't have to live in an eco-community to do it, but if every person can make one intention, small intention of something to do to help with the environment, all of those things will add up to something that's big and really does have an impact on our planet and all the plants and animals that live here. All of us, and for our children's children. So that's very important. After we do our part, the three of us, we're going to open things up for questions. And following that, there are two optional tours for those of you who would like to see either the microhydro system, which is how everything is powered here. All the buildings at Laughing Waters are powered from Hickory Nut Creek. So that will involve a short hike upstream to see the intake, and Bill Maurer will lead that, and he's been involved in pretty much everything around here since day one. He's amazing. And then you guys will come down here and see the turbine shed and where the water flows down, creates the electricity, and then goes into the pond. So that's one tour you can take. The other one is to get in your car actually and do a very short drive up to the entrance to Hickory Nut Forest, and there somebody will direct you to the Lovers Home, which is at 35 Silver Bell Road, and that is a total solar home. So Jane Lovers will be up there. She's got 2 children, so she's not down here now, but she will be up there to show you that home. So, as Pam said, I'm the co-founder of this place with my late husband, John Myers. So, yeah, it's hard for me to talk about him without getting a little emotional, but he's right there with you. So, yeah. So really, this is his brainchild. I was the cheerleader. I just helped him. And then I learned by osmosis, because all the things that he did in a very short period of time to put all this together is amazing. So I learned that way, and now I'm here to carry on, which I'm very honored to do. So John was a Renaissance man. His background was vast and varied, and he used every single part of his life experience to create this place. His career included being a psychotherapist, an energy healer, a finance guy on Wall Street, and also he worked at Bell Labs for a while and learned the ins and outs of technology. But the thing that he was most passionate about was rock climbing. So he spent a lot of time on rock faces and in the wilderness from the time he was a child up until, months before he passed. And it was this way that he fell in love with the outdoors and then developed a longing to protect it. So his belief was that if everybody had a chance to be outdoors, that the same thing would happen. And this would be how we would save the planet. So in the 18 years before he created this place, he worked for the New York-New Jersey Trail Conference, the Trust for Public Land, the Access Fund, and the Carolina Climbers Association, creating trails and parks and climbing areas in the Northeast and North Carolina and beyond. So the way this all came about is pretty magical, and I just want to tell you how it happened. John and I were looking for a place to call home. And so we took a 6-month trip in our truck camper across the United States and stayed in some really beautiful spots. None of them, however, were as beautiful to me as the Southern Mountains. And so I wanted to come back here. So after 5 months of traveling, I did that. I came back to Asheville, and John stayed out in California and climbed the high Sierras, which was what he really wanted to do. So when he was on his way back here to be with me, he had a chance encounter with someone in Denver. He dropped in to see a friend of his mom's, and there he met her son-in-law, Gary Gantner, who was also in transit. He was leaving in about 30 minutes from the time John walked in the door for a 6-month work stint out in Australia. So it was in that 30-minute or so period of time when they started talking about North Carolina, which is where John was coming, that he found out that Gary's family owned a place in North Carolina somewhere and were thinking about selling it in a tiny hamlet called Girton. And neither one of them knew where Girton was, so they got out a road atlas and looked it up and found out that it was about 15 miles from Asheville. So when John got back, he, immediately, like the next day, came out here and bushwhacked his way through. It was really wild and overgrown, and he found his way down to the creek, and he saw the ruins of the old grist mill, stone ruins. We recreated it here, but it washed away in the flood of 1916. And the stone chimneys out there of the old farmhouse, which are still standing, and he fell in love. So he said, Jane, we have got to get this property. So he spent the next year and a half figuring out how to do that. And he negotiated with the banks and the sellers. And, I forgot to tell you that Gary Gantner was a descendant, or is a descendant, I guess, of Alva Dennison. Now, I don't know if any of you have been in Girton for a while. I don't see a lot of old Girtonites here, but anyway, Alva was a matriarch here. That there are a lot of stories about her. and all of her descendants ended up out west. So that's an interesting piece if you knew Alva. Anyway, so where was I going? He finally figured out, after a year and a half, how to make this happen with the help of my sister Lynn, her husband Tom, and John's mother Pat. And we closed on 200 acres in Hickory Nut Gorge. This place that we're on now, and also the land above, which was a separate piece, those landowners found out that we were buying this and offered to sell us that as well, so we bought that because that's where Wildcat Rock is, and Little Bear Walla Falls, and all these beautiful rock faces up there, which are now climbing areas, so that was just one really fortuitous thing that happened. So this was in 2003 20 years ago, that we closed on this property. And then the next year, we also bought an additional 40 acres, which is adjacent to the original pieces that we bought, which contains another 1,000 feet of stream front and an old apple orchard. So in our original quest to find our home, we had thought maybe 5 to 10 acres would be about right. And we ended up with 240. So John sees this opportunity to create his ideal community. The prototype being how to live sustainably, which is what we're talking about here. So the original focus in his mind was on protecting the creek and on maintaining contiguous areas of wild forest land, and on having covenants to protect the environment for the people who would eventually come here and build their homes. So I won't go into every iteration of that plan because it would take all day, but suffice it to say that we created Hickory Nut Forest Eco Community, which is right up the hill here. It's got 20 home sites on about 26 acres of the property, all clustered together. And then Laughing Waters Retreat, which is also the community center, and that's on another 57 acres. And started to create the trail system here, which has now evolved into the Hickory Nut Gorge State Trail. So John was actually one of the original visionaries who brainstormed with a lot of other people about how to do that, and now it has become an award-winning trail, and eventually will traverse the upper gorge here, and on the other side of the road go down to eventually Chimney Rock and Lake Lure is the plan. So Conserving Carolina has been involved in all of this too, I have to say. We have put about 65 acres or so in conservation easement with Conserving Carolina. We also sold about 100 of the original acres to Conserving Carolina for protection and also for access to this trail. So most of the acreage we bought remains wild and will continue to be so. And we hoped that this idea would draw people with similar values to come and help evolve the dream, which is exactly what has happened. And it's been beautiful, so that's been great. The pillars of this community are land stewardship, green-built homes, renewable energy, education, and healthy food. So let's see, when John passed away 5 years ago in 2018, the community really worked together to ensure that it would be continued success. And we currently have 7 homes that are completed up in Hickory Nut Forest, 1 home that is almost complete, and 5 families that are considering building in the near future. Some of our biggest challenges so far have been to figure out how to work together and make decisions that uphold the pillars of the community, and also how to assure that the original intention of this community is upheld into the future. So let's see. The HOA has become totally self-governing in the last 5 years. We've developed a system for decision-making, which includes bringing up issues in between meetings and allowing a lot of time for discussion informally amongst ourselves and working out the kinks, which then makes our semi-annual meetings more effective and efficient. We have a community garden down in the orchard, which provides lots of learning opportunities. 3 years ago, we discovered that the old apple trees had the fire blight, which is lethal and very contagious. So we have taken down 99% of those dear old apple trees, and now we're learning how to eradicate the blight. And we will be replanting native fruit trees, and we will also be getting rid of some invasives up there and allowing some areas for plants that support pollinators and caterpillars. So right now we're prioritizing the education pillar of the community, which is why we're all sitting here. We want to provide opportunities for people to come and learn, and also want to open up the property for outdoor classes for children so that they can come and have experiences in the wilderness and develop that love and longing to protect the environment. There are so many eco-communities in the world. This is just one. So all the other ones range from a little bit smaller than ours to much, much bigger. Each one has different intentions, but they have in common the intention to live in harmony with their particular environment. So I just want to tell you briefly about 4 other communities, Earth Haven being probably the closest one to us, on 229 acres between Black Mountain and Old Fort. Its focus is sustainability and permaculture, which is an approach to land management that follows principles observed in the surrounding ecosystem. Founded in '94, they have over 75 members now. All this is from the websites, by the way. And they have businesses. They have a permaculture plant nursery. They have a tool rental business. They provide access to consultants and courses in permaculture design, creating new eco-villages, herbal medicine, and women's health. I think that the people in Earth Haven don't actually own their homes that they've built and live in necessarily, but the homes are a part of the community, and when the homeowners either move or die, they remain a part of the community. Twin Oaks is located in Central Virginia. They focus on land conservation, resource efficiency, recycling, and reusing. They share a lot. They share vehicles, equipment, living space, and more. In their recycling, they even have developed a dumpster diving culture, which I find interesting.
I just did that last week.
You did? Seriously?
Yes! I pulled out some wonderful wire shelves that are construction companies
Very
were
cool.
on.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Right? I was thinking about food, and I
Not for food.
So much of their food is grown within the community, an organic farm, and they heat with local harvested firewood and passive solar. They too have businesses like the Twin Oaks Hammocks, a certified organic tofu business, and certified organic seed production. Walnut Creek Preserve is another eco community here in Western North Carolina, but on a much larger scale. They're located in Mill Spring, and they're a planned equestrian community of over 2,100 acres. They have forested trails for the horses, and all of this is surrounded by 25 home sites. Each home site is 20 plus acres. It's all designed for horses and horse owners, and the pasture land has a tremendous variety of indigenous species, some that are rare and threatened. So a great number of acres, 1,500 acres, are protected in perpetuity by deeded conservation easements, I believe with Conserving Carolina. And the last one I'll tell you about is Babcock Ranch is situated on 18,000 acres in southwest Florida. It's adjacent to an extensive wilderness preserve, and it considers itself a town. It has hiking and biking paths, greenways, schools, and the whole town is outfitted with fiber optic internet, so they have a fully connected lifestyle. So as you can see, eco-communities are varied, and there's a variety of ways to create them. But John and I felt, and I still feel, a sense of urgency about all of this to do something to, as I've talked about already, to really conserve this beautiful place where we live. This is such a rich and diverse ecosystem here, and the beauty of working with Conserving Carolina is that a lot of this land is protected into perpetuity. Not only the Hickory Nut Forest area, but the other areas of Burton, the other areas of Hickory Nut Gorge and beyond. So we are so fortunate to be here. We have wonderful neighbors here in Burton. The arrival of all the like-minded souls who have helped to build the community is a blessing. And as I've said, the incredible support of Conserving Carolina has made all of this possible. John and I always talked about how we were surprised at how it seemed like the help would come whenever it was needed. And we felt, and I still feel, that the land is in charge here, really, telling us what to do and what it needs. And the mystery about how it all unfolded is still, I still have to pinch myself about that because the land was never for sale. And if he had arrived an hour later than he did, we would never know about this land. We would never have known. So it's a real honor to be a part of this incredible grand venture. So thank you all.
So I'm going to try the microphone because my voice is not as grand as yours. You have a good voice. So I've always been interested in intentional living from a health standpoint, and so for a long time I've been looking into intentional living communities and going down through rabbit holes. I ended up finding this place. And it was very exciting because it was a combination of what both my husband Matt and I were looking for. Matt, of course, wants proximity to Asheville and all the amazing restaurants. And then I want the community and the garden and the sustainable living. He wants all that too. But so when I think of a healthy environment, and I know that others share my sentiment, is a healthy environment is a reflection on a healthy people and its community. And so when and Miss Norbert Hodge, who's wrote Local is Our Future, and it's an amazing book and talks a lot about food, also agrees with this, that if we want to look at solving the issue of an unhealthy environment, we need to look at solving the issue on the community level. So essentially, I think intentional living seeks to solve that issue on a systems level. And that is really the reason that I'm so attracted to intentional living. Intentional living can be framed many different ways. I work in Charlotte, and what I research is what healthcare looks like when delivered in a community, and when it's based on a foundation of trust, understanding, access to healthy food, spirituality, and a sense of purpose for the patients. So I would consider that intentional living. It's happening in an urban center in a 384-unit apartment complex. And the cornerstone to this research is food access, but it's not just access to food, it's healthy local food access. Because I really feel like that's what brings the community together. Everyone needs food every day, multiple times a day. Which kind of brings me to something historical that I like to look on, and you might know what I'm talking about, the Victory Gardens. Does anybody know what a Victory Garden is? Okay. So in 1917, the government said, we're going to war, and we need to send all of our food overseas. And we're going to ask the families to grow your own food in your backyard. And so the slogan, sow the seeds of victory, came around, and that is where the Victory Garden was born. And this trend continued through World War II, and in 1944, 40% of all food consumed came from someone's backyard. And that doesn't mean that everybody grew a garden, it means people shared. It means they, valued their neighbor and shared, their tomato plant. Now, it's interesting, the USDA actually did pose the question, this is in quotes, time for Victory Gardens again, question mark? And we've actually seen this as a resurgence because of COVID. I don't know about you, but the first thing we did is we built a chicken coop and got chickens. And we already had a garden, and I also noticed the seed shortage. So there's several numbers out there. It's really hard to define what garden is in research. Is it a tomato plant, or is it a quarter acre of tomato plants? We don't know. So I've seen as little as 2% comes out of a backyard garden as far as food consumption. And I've seen as high as 25%. I would hope it's 25%. But on that note, talking about the local food production, the USDA does actually report that small local farms are the most numerous in the United States, yet it only constitutes 13% of food sales in the United States. 67% comes from industrialized farming. The gap that I'm not accounting for right there, there's a middle of the road size of farm. It's all based on dollar amount. So what does this mean for the implication on health, environment, and most importantly, I think, sovereignty, food sovereignty? So on average, you guys have probably heard this number, 3,000 miles is how far your food travels before it gets to your grocery store. And it's been at least 7 days, probably, on average, that it's been harvested. So that broccoli on your plate now has the nutritional value of cardboard. And if you're eating it for the nutritional value and not for the taste, then I'm very sorry. And then also attributed to that is monocropping. If you've heard of monocropping, it's just vast amounts of the same crop. There is a lot of research that needs to be done on what that means for the health of the human that consumes that food. But you would think from deductive reasoning, poor health equals poor plant equals poor health in human who eats it. And then that also talks about pesticides. A lot of research is needed around pesticides. Glyphosate is really a big one being discussed right now. I've seen a lot of research out there ranging from it has 0 carcinogenic effects on humans to a cohort study of 5,000 that actually showed multiple myeloma. So, we need to explore that, but I err personally on the side of caution. The more natural, the better.
That's Roundup, by the way.
Yes, it's Roundup. I'm trying to stay away.
Well,
Yeah, Roundup.
it's good to know.
Yeah, it is. It's Roundup.
What it is.
Yeah, it's Roundup. And also the other thing is, food, as far as the environmental impact, food is grown in one location and then shipped to another location. And I'm not talking grown in Mecklenburg County and shipped to Henderson County. I'm talking grown in the United States, shipped to another country for food, for processing and packaging, and shipped right back to the same place Yes, this is, right, and there's a whole bunch of different politics around that. But, the bottom line is that 16, and if you know how to better number on this, I would actually like, this might be the number. 16% of the total US energy consumption goes to industrialized farming. And that's actually quite a bit. So I know we talk a lot about cow poop. It is not actually the cow poop itself. It's how it is accumulated, how it is disposed of, where it goes, that really creates those greenhouse gas emissions. So I did work on the UN, so with a conglomerate of international organizations, I worked on the UN's COP, so that's the climate conference that happens every year, and all the UN nations come together and see what we got to talk about. I helped do the first food pavilion this year. I did not go to Egypt, so I did not get to see it in action, but it was the first food pavilion, and this was really big conversation around how food is actually impacting a huge impact on the environment. And the big push for the food pavilion was actually a reduction of meat consumption, and also, and this was my favorite, trying to calculate how many kcals per carbon emission is in each food product. So we're calculating how many, is cherries better to ship around the world than tomatoes, because this has more. And I think that that's all great because it's going to take a lot of different avenues to solve this issue. But I was really pushing local food. Why not local food production? It doesn't have to go anywhere. It keeps healthy, it keeps the soil healthy, keeps people together. And they agreed. And so hopefully next year, COP28, which I hope to go to because it's in Brazil, they're going to be talking more about the local food production. And also, last and definitely not least, food sovereignty. Traditionally, when a group of people want to control another group of people, they control their food supply. And taking away your food supply creates a system of poverty. It's historically shown to do that. And humans need food sovereignty. And food sovereignty, I like the definition. Unfortunately, I don't know where I got this, but it's defined as the ability of a community to determine the quality and quantity of the food that they consume by controlling how their food is produced and distributed. And to me, that's hickory nut. This is the garden down here. The community decides what's grown there and how they do it, and made the decision to remove the trees. That might have been a really hard decision, but what if that was a conglomerate deciding that? Maybe those trees would have been treated with whatever chemical, right? And there are organizations, in addition to Hickory Nut Forest, that are doing this, and Root Cause Farm, that's right down the road, Fairview, right? And this comes off their website, and I really like this. They work towards a just food system by using grassroots methods of growing and distributing. That's food sovereignty. And they also have a community garden where you can go and they have educational opportunities and get your hands dirty, meet with the people around you, and really enjoy working the land. And I think that this is a shining example of accountability to the land and the people and the food. And it naturally creates environmentally friendly practices, right? I think that sometimes when we think, we gotta do something environmentally friendly, but natural processes like that are, by nature, environmentally friendly. Carolina Farm Trust, I used to work for them, they're in Charlotte. They actually create urban farms in the city, but they didn't go in and go, if we build it, they will come. They actually gave it to the community, said, this is yours, it's food sovereignty. How do you want to grow it? How do you want to distribute it, or do you want to keep it here? So it's these grassroots organizations, along with policy making. North Carolina Medicaid expansion does include a provision for Medicaid to pay for food. So that's in the House or Senate right now. I can't remember which one it is, but it's there. But that's just one small piece. Access is one small piece of food. Like, for example, is it culturally relevant? Can it be grown? Can it be cooked in their home? Not everybody has pots and pans. I can tell you that for a fact. Is it something that they'll enjoy because their palate was developed a specific way growing up? And this is where education comes in. So, Root Cause has a lot of education program. Hickory Nut Forest, huge investment on education. And this all provides the big pieces for food access success. And this is an interesting story. So one of the things I did within my program is I established with Mecklenburg County transportation for my patients to get on a bus, picks them right up at their door, takes them to the farmer's market every Saturday, and this is a really great farmer's market, by the way. Amazing, right? I'm like, yes, everybody's gonna go. They accept food stamps, they even match it dollar for dollar, sometimes triple the match. We get that bus out there, no one got on that bus. No one got on the bus.
We don't know how to cook it.
They're afraid of it. They don't know what to expect, number one, at a farmer's market. They've never been. Number two, they don't even know what's in season. So I think everyone, it was towards the end of the season and everyone was wanting, I can't remember what it was, but it was definitely not in season. So it was only after I started an education program around the different aspects of food did people actually start getting on the bus. So now I'm happy to report that people are actually going, and when the bus doesn't show up for one reason or another, or maybe a loss of driver or whatever, they're upset now, and I love that. But it took that education aspect on that. So when it comes to intentional living communities, I think that it is a really strong piece to solve the environmental issue on the community and human level, especially when we talk about food sustainability practices. And it brings the community together, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Can you hear me without the mic? No? Okay. Where's the phone? Right, I'll try to hear it. There you go. So it's a real pleasure to be here and to see this pillar, the educational pillar, lifted up, because it's just a thrill to be part of the unfolding of such an exciting vision. I harbored a deep interest in sustainable living from an early age, probably in part because I was lucky enough to grow up on one of those small farms that you talked about, and was reading Wendell Berry early on in my life. And specifically, I'm really interested in how we build, design, locate, inhabit, and connect the places that we live and the infrastructure that we use, and the impact that that has on the environment around us, and the wildlife and wild places. So, as you heard in my bio, I've been working in the conservation and environmental community my whole career. When I started off, I, like many, had great dreams of being a field biologist, and I wanted to be the next Jane Goodall. And if you love the environment, that's what you do. And I spent a summer studying pronghorn antelope in the lonely landscape of the BLM lands in Wyoming, and decided I was better suited to work on the policies and advocacy. And so that I ended up going, I still had this real interest in place